45 past the hour. Welcome back to Morning Joe. Live look at Washington, D.C. Joining us now here in New York, international economist Dambisa Moyo. She's the author of the new book, Winner Take All, China's Race for Resources and What It Means for the World. Also, senior fellow at the New America Foundation, Parag Khanna. He's the co-author of the new ebook, Reality Hybrid, Thriving in the Emerging Human Technology Civilization. This is going to be interesting. Dambisa, let me start with you. Your book, Winner Take All, Struggling Economies, Political Awakenings, Political Unrest Around the World. But what do you say is the biggest threat in the coming decades?
So my book is essentially a call to action. I strongly believe that commodity headwinds are the biggest issue that we're going to confront in the next several decades. Already, we have 25 wars that are raging around the world, which have their origins in commodities. The United States Department of Intelligence just 6 weeks ago put out a report raising the alarm around water wars. And more generally, we see a lot more pressure with commodity prices rising. Demand simply cannot be met by the supply, finite, depleting and scarce supply of everything from arable land, water, to energy and minerals.
Okay, these are the basics.
And it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. You write about this, China, in a world where cash is king. China's much-noted cash stockpile, over $3 trillion in foreign currency reserves in 2012, affords it the ability to do what other countries can't do and go where other countries can't go. Simply put, the Chinese are on a global shopping spree, and its voracious commodity appetite is unlikely to abate significantly, even if China's economic growth rates were to cool. Where's this going?
So the first thing people seem to overlook is that many of the countries where China is going, places like Africa, South America, even places like Canada, have very, very large pockets of young people. 60% of the population in Africa is under the age of 24. In places across the Middle East, we know 70% of the population is under the age of 24. In places like Uganda, 50% under the age of 15. And they need investment, they need job creation, they need trade, and this is what China is offering. It's a very symbiotic relationship, incredibly beneficial to these economies, and it basically works for China too.
Are there issues within the Chinese political system, given their own generational shifts and the constraints of their own system, will affect their projection of power and their accumulation of it?
Well, I think they have absolutely no interest in acquiring political power at this time. And so I think one of the pieces of misinformation out there is that somehow China is in a neo-colonial or imperialistic stance. This is all about economics. They've got a 1.3 billion population. As we know, 300 million live like us, if you will, Western standards, but 1 billion people who are living in very dire economic circumstances. And the reality is, without China, without there being a significant improvement in those livelihoods, we're talking about political instability in China, and that is something they will avoid at all costs.
So, Parag, let's bring your book into this. How does technology play into the picture that she's describing here?
A very big way, because not only are they going out around the world and buying up natural resources, as Dambisa has written about, but they're also acquiring technology assets and innovations from abroad and bringing them back home. What we write about in Hybrid Reality is how the Chinese 5-year plan issued a year ago is considered the technology 5-year plan. They're committing $1 trillion of investment to advanced technology areas, which include nanotechnology, biotechnology, advanced manufacturing, alternative energy, more efficient agriculture. All of these relate to natural resources and to meeting the needs of their population economically and in terms of sustenance. So it really shows that their big emphasis moving forward is going to be on using technology to feed and nourish their population so that they can diminish the dependence on having to go abroad into unstable political environments where, yes, you're right, Dambisa, it's all about economics, but at the same time there is a growing backlash, right, against China in many of these places. So they have to be very careful.
While so much of human intellectual capital, commodity capital now is moving without much regard to borders, we still are a nation state and require a certain competitive position. What has your research shown about America's comparative position and the possibilities over the next 10 years?
We are still the most inventive nation in the world, right? And also incredibly innovative, perhaps the most innovative nation as well. But for one thing, the diffusion of that innovation is happening faster than ever. We invent something one day, it gets commercialized, tested, deployed into the market, commoditized instantly in Asia. We can't rest on our laurels, as it were, and say, look, just because Apple, Facebook, IBM, Cisco, Google, they're all American, and yet those technologies are diffusing very quickly and being adapted to Asian markets where the people are, right, where the profits are to be made. So we can't, unfortunately, be too complacent about it.
Are there also, we play by different rules, does that hold us back ultimately?
Of course, it does to some extent. Take just two issues. One, the speed of human trials of biotechnology. Very slow here. There's a saying, we like to play with our mice.
Right.
In China, I wouldn't be surprised if they move quickly into human trials for a variety of genetic enhancement treatments and therapies. They have a rapidly aging population, which they have to worry about, obviously, caring for. Their dependency ratio is very vast. So that's one reason. There was a high school last week in China that was censured for giving sort of energy-boosting injections to its students. So this kind of thing is actually already happening. Yeah.
Mika does that.
Yeah. Is that against the law?
Is that what it takes to wake up so early in the morning and do Morning Joe?
Oh, you have no idea. You don't want to know.
At least you don't have to do 6 hours of homework at the end of the day, or do you?
Well.
Okay, so in winner take all, Dambisa, where do we go with all of this? Where does this lead us?
Just picking up on the last question, one of the big issues that I found was that China has adopted a multilateral approach to securing resources, and I touched on this earlier. The approach has been incredibly symbiotic. It's been incredibly encompassing. So they go to these countries and they offer them what these countries want in return for gaining access to these resources, and it works beautifully. A Pew survey a few years ago went to Africa and asked Africans, what do you think of the Chinese? Do you like them? Do you hate them? And how do you think of them compared to the Americans? And by wide margins, 95%, 98%, the Africans said, we love the Chinese. They're improving our livelihoods, and this is really meaningfully important. And by the way, they're better than the Americans. But just in terms of contrast, the Americans have tended to adopt a very unilateral approach to securing resources. And I think that is where there's a lot of scope for much more cooperation and much more cohesive approach to dealing with this issue.
All right, Dambisa Moyo, thank you. The book is Winner Take All, and Parag Khanna, thank you as well. Your e-book is Reality Hybrid. Thanks very much to both of you for being on the show.
Thank you.
Stay with us. You're watching Morning Joe, brewed by Starbucks.